could take a seat, there is some more spare seats at the front for those who are standing, just so we can kick off. I'll just give you a second or two. Thanks. So while there's just a little bit of movement at the back, I'm Deborah Owens. I am one of the co-leads of the Maritime Environment and Decarbonisation team in DFT, alongside Eamon, who will be guiding you through this afternoon session. I hope you've enjoyed LISW so far. It's been a really busy week, and I think especially with a lot of decarbonisation events, which is great to see. Today's really exciting for us, and we're so pleased that so many of you are able to make it to see what a momentous year it has been for Clean Maritime. A few housekeeping points before we begin. We're not expecting a fire alarm, so if it goes off, it is for real. If the alarm sounds, there is a pre-recorded announcement with instructions for everyone to leave the premises. Anyone with accessibility needs will be assisted. If at any point a delegate requires first aid, please contact a member of the Central Hall venue staff. So thank you for that. There's an awful lot happening today. We have speeches, we have breakout groups, we have panel sessions. This is really a celebration of UK Shore with over 50 projects, and later this afternoon our B2 match activity as well. So we hope you make the most of the day. Hopefully there's going to be a QR code behind me in a minute. Please use the QR code to download an app for the day. We will be using this to run Q&A throughout the breakout sessions. Don't be disappointed if we don't get to your question. We'll try and answer these after the event. And with that, I'm hoping that I'm really happy to introduce our new Maritime Minister, Keir Mather, to the stage.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Keir Mather, the new Maritime Minister, and it is a pleasure to welcome you to Clean Maritime Day. Whether you've travelled from near or far, I am so glad that you've been able to join us. Welcome to London, a city at the forefront of maritime decarbonisation. Making the UK a clean energy superpower is a whole country mission, and I've seen Green Maritime create so many opportunities back in my home in Yorkshire, bringing new skills and future-facing jobs to my community. But I want these benefits to be felt across the entirety of the UK, as decarbonisation opens more doors for more hard-working people. Britain's maritime industry is a melting pot of green innovation. Talented teams all over the country are brimming with bold new ideas, and it's our job to help bring them to life. And that's why we're backing the UK Shore programme with a further £448 million, the largest ever government investment in commercial maritime. And this funding will help innovators to get their green solutions off the ground and into our ports, onto our ships and around the world. And having supported 200 projects to date, the value of this programme is undeniable. Our landmark investment will help to accelerate its progress, with a second round of the zero-emission vessels and infrastructure competition, 3 more rounds of the Clean Maritime Decarbonisation competition, and extra support for the Clean Maritime Research Hub. We'll also continue to champion international cooperation, particularly on pre-deployment trials, and we're teaming up with Innovate UK and others to break down those barriers to scaling up, helping British businesses to boom in the global market. But let me be clear, this is not about throwing money at the problem. It's about providing strategic investment in exactly the right places. And it's about charting the course with decisive green leadership. And that's where our maritime decarbonisation strategy comes in. Published back in March, it provides a clear pathway to 2050, underlined by an unwavering commitment to innovation. My department has finally ended decades of dither and delay, restoring the certainty that Maritime needs to invest and a plan for a greener future. But this strategy goes far beyond reducing emissions. It will also spark growth in all four corners of the United Kingdom, deliver regeneration and renewal in our coastal towns, and attract the investment that this sector needs to succeed. Now, on Monday, we unveiled £700 million in private sector investment for Maritime, and huge swathes of this funding will be poured into green projects, such as a new clean energy hub in Ayrshire, a world-class solar power scheme in Liverpool, and shoreside power right across the United Kingdom. It is fantastic to see industry matching government's appetite for sustainable growth and continuing to recognise that the UK is a great place to do business. So by matching investment with leadership, potential with purpose, and ambition with action, we can all work together to build a greener future for Maritime. In my new role, I'm eager to listen and to learn from you all over the coming months. But today, I know that you have a jam-packed agenda ahead of you. So I'll just close by saying a huge thank you for making me feel so welcome this London International Shipping Week. Thank you to our panellists for offering our expertise, and thank you all for supporting London International Shipping Week. And without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our panel, who are going to share their views on the importance of international collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister, for a great introduction speech to the day. As the Minister said, we now have a panel session. I'm very excited to welcome them to the stage. They're going to discuss national action and global cooperation in what has been a critical year for maritime decarbonisation. We're thrilled to have so many panellists representing the views of different countries and eager to hear their perspectives. I will now pass over to Aoife O'Leary to introduce the panellists and hope you all enjoy the discussion. Thank you.
Hello everyone, nice to be here and really excited for this incredibly distinguished panel that we have. So I'm going to quickly introduce our panellists and then get into the meat of the discussion. And I think you can put questions in the Q&A as well. Many of these panelists need no introduction at all, but we have Sveinung Oftedal, who I'm sure many of you will know from the IMO. He is the Chief Negotiator of Green Shipping, the Norwegian Ministry of Climate and Environment. We have David Osborne, who is the Director of the Marine Environment Division of the International Maritime Organization. We have Rosie Sville, who is the Permanent Representation of the UK to the IMO. And we have the Ambassador of Greece to the UK, Yannis Tausis. So we've got, I'm sure, a number of brilliant things we could discuss with this panel. But I'm going to go straight into it. And maybe, David, I could start with you and just set the scene a bit. We all know that the International Maritime Organization came to a really historic agreement in April. So maybe you could just set the scene and tell us what is the agreement and why is it so historic?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Eve. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, to be in this wonderful venue. It looks fantastic. For those of you who don't know me, I actually only joined the IMO 2 weeks ago. So I feel very honoured to be coming into the organisation at a very auspicious time when we're really seeing some progress. We were just reflecting backstage a little bit and in terms of the history of these processes and how long it can take. I remember way back in the early 90s as a young officer in the Royal Australian Navy, myself and one other officer were tasked with the role of writing the Australian Navy's very first environmental policy. And we were kind of seen as a bit, in that back room. We need a policy, but for public-facing policy, but it wasn't really taken all that seriously. And greenhouse gas emissions were not even considered even though climate change was already on the international agenda, it wasn't a real focus. And in fact, I think we can reflect back from that time when the shipping industry, both the navies and the merchant fleet, were considered, you might say, laggards when it comes to environmental issues and particularly greenhouse gas. When in fact now the industry is in a position where it's a vanguard industry. It's setting the pace. So the net zero framework is a really exciting opportunity. It's a world first framework that sets a worldwide regulation for greenhouse gas emissions, a pricing mechanism. This is really an opportunity for the world's merchant fleet to be saying to the rest of the world, this is how you do it.
Brilliant. And we're going to dig into more of what will come soon in October in a minute. But maybe, Yanis, I could ask you, Greece has a long and proud maritime history. And obviously you're also part of the EU. And the EU now has regulations on fuel standards for ships and also a cap on the emissions, separately to the IMO agreement. And I guess we'll see how that plays out. But would love to hear, do you think that regulation has been important in driving green innovation in the shipping industry in Greece?
As you know, Greece, thank you very much for the question. Thank you very much for having us today. And thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for being here and bearing with us with me for the next 3-4 minutes. I just wanted to say that, for us, our participation, our membership to the EU, and of course the regulations and everything is very, very important in the sense that we are there for 45 years, and of course we abide with the policies of the EU, the environmental policies, and we seize every opportunity in order to translate whatever policies are coming from Europe into, as you say, concrete initiatives that promote innovation and technology and take us to the new era, to the new net zero era, in the sense that we use all this experience and all this regulation in order to confront with, to face the climate change, very important challenge that we are all facing worldwide. Having said that, we have also initiatives and we are participating at the global level as well. As you know, Greece is a member of the United Nations for 80 years, as most of all the countries are represented today here. And now, in the last 2 years, we are members of the UN Security Council. And one of the 5 priorities, of the 6 priorities we're having in the UN Security Council is also climate change, because we believe that there is a link. The situation is so critical, so that we believe that there is a link between security and what the UN Security Council does and climate change. So we are promoting this idea there as well, and of course in many other international fora and agencies, including the IMO and the WMO, where I happened to represent Greece when I was serving in Geneva a few years ago on some occasions. So this brings me to the main issue, and the main argument of the day that I want to propose to you is that we have to be we have to have compatible policies. You know, the European standards must be also compatible with the global standards, because it's not the states that are operating this business. There is an industry behind that, and as you said, Greece is a maritime nation. Greek ship owners they're having about the 20% of the global industry, the 60% of the EU fleet. So it's important that global standards and European standards are compatible in order not to distort competition and to create equal market access, and also giving opportunities to the enterprise, to the industry, especially the smaller ones. And this is very important because we are facing a lot of challenges. At the same time of climate change, we are facing a lot of challenges as far as food security, the price stability, and energy security is concerned. So we have to be sure that everything goes together. And IMO is a forum where we can have this. And of course, there are a lot of efforts, and we hope that in the future, in the near future, there are going to be also improvements in this kind in the net zero framework, so that we can really have the industry on board and try to have a fair competition, and then having everybody satisfied and operational, in the sense that we can, at the same time as we promote climate change, we promote the dangerous, the measures in order to confront climate change. At the same time, we are sure that food security and energy security are not affected. Thank you.
Thank you. And maybe then to kind of stay with the national aspect, and Rosie, obviously the UK has also a long and proud maritime history, but especially in maritime innovation, and is the host country to the International Maritime Organization as well. So just love to hear what action is the UK taking domestically, whilst also, that to complement the ambitious global positions that you have in the IMO.
Well, thank you, and thank you very much for having me on this prestigious panel. It's a real pleasure to be here. So I'm Rosie Seville. I'm the UK's permanent representative to the International Maritime Organization. So my day job is negotiating with other member states and working hard to develop the international regulation that we need to support a green transition for maritime. And that's not just the environmental measures, but also the safety and legal frameworks needed to enable that transition. And you're right, we are among the most ambitious member states internationally at the IMO. And it's really important that we are following that up with ambitious domestic action. So as the Minister set out, in March of this year, the UK published its Maritime Decarbonisation Strategy. And that strategy really sets the strategic direction for the UK to decarbonise the domestic maritime sector by 2050. So it includes a set of goals for the sector, along with a set of key policies to meet those goals. In doing that, we've followed the principle that we need to match the highest levels of ambition internationally. So the strategy aligns with the highest level of target set out in the IMO's 2023 greenhouse gas emissions reduction strategy. That's a 30% reduction by 2030 and an 80% reduction by 2040 compared to levels in 2008. So we're making sure that we're recognising what we do, that decarbonisation is a truly global effort, and really trying to lead the way in what we're doing in the UK. Some of the policies set out in that strategy to ensure that we meet those levels of ambition include setting out our intention to expand the UK emissions trading scheme to maritime from July 2026, implementing new regulations for fuels, decarbonising ports and enabling them to support the decarbonisation of the wider maritime sector, developing proportional measures that target smaller vessels, and developing measures to improve the energy efficiency of maritime operations. We know that transition is going to take significant private investment, so the strategy is really intended to provide the level of policy certainty that is needed to transition vessels to using zero and near zero emission fuels. It's also underpinned by investment in research and development. As the Minister just said, just this week we've announced a further £448 million for the UK Shore programme, that's the UK Shipping Office for Reducing Emissions, which will enable further research into clean maritime technologies and allow us to look deeper into some of the technological solutions needed for that transition. And I mean, if I can just bring it back round to the sort of international collaboration, we are not going to be able to do this without learning from best practice internationally. And I think that's why we're so lucky to have the UK Shore exhibition here today. So very much encourage you to have a look around that and see some of the solutions in action. It's also why we're so lucky to have the IMO here in London, and we don't take that for granted. We have a huge ecosystem of maritime experts together under one roof, and that is going to be key to enable the kind of interdisciplinary thinking that we need to solve this for the next generation of maritime technologies.
Brilliant. And that has definitely teed us nicely with that kind of global learning piece. And you'd be delighted to know that Svining told me behind the scenes that he's happy for really hard questions. So hold on to your seats. But no, I mean, for those who don't know Svining, he has really been instrumental in leading all of these countries in the IMO through to the net zero framework that we have. And I imagine you're quite proud, rightly so, of it. And so I'm wondering if you could tell us, what could the rest of the world learn in terms of the multilateralism of the IMO? Because there's a number of areas where we're in desperate need of that kind of multilateralism, not just in terms of environment, but other places. So I don't know if you've got any key lessons. And if that was the easy question, then for the really hard question, will the net zero framework get across the line in October?
Okay. Thank you also for having me here. And can I just start with one fun fact?
Absolutely.
Simply because we are talking about IMO Net Zero Framework, which would be an amendment to MARPOL Annex 6. And here at this place, we also achieved another historical agreement when Metropolis, you remember Metropolis, then stated when he had the adoption of the revised MARPOL Annex 6 in 2008, he said it was an historical agreement, and the agreement was made in this room, simply because there was refurbishment of the IMO. So let's hope that is a good signal for the IMO October meeting, that, you know, this place also is, let's say, giving the signal that we will make it. First question you asked me. Let me bring this into some historical perspective, because I've been working with the, let's say, IMO process for 30 years. And, you know, previously, nobody cared outside the shipping industry. You know, it was the Maritime, and that was it. And, you know, when I came home to the ministry and, you know, you've been to a meeting, you know, and nobody was really, well, asking questions. Now it is completely different, because I think the rest of the world, outside world, and also those working in other multilateral processes, and say, oh, what are you doing at the IMO? And they ask, how do you do it? I have colleagues working with the plastic agreements asking questions. I have colleagues working with M&E issues. And the minister is very focused on, you know, this is really a light spark in the global world today, and is encouraged on how the IM model is functioning. What I'm proud about is that we then at the IMO has established a tradition to announce what we will do and have a follow-up in the process with member states and also the observer organizations involved, that we deliver on time, and we are on time in what we have said, and we deliver on content. And we have then a decision-making process which is robust enough to make that happen. And on climate, which is one of the most difficult political issues globally, and now we are connected to the energy transition, which is also political sensible issue, we have managed to say that we stay together in this process. Coming towards a decision, and as we did in April when we had the approval, of course, and I think you can subscribe to this, Rosie, that it is sometimes difficult because you need to leave your positions, your primary viewpoint. But then afterwards, experience that what we have agreed, the solution is actually our solution, you know, feeling to be a part of that solution and going into it as a team. That is strengthening what we are doing. That is setting the example for other processes globally. So I hope that when we are finished with this autumn, we can continue to provide that message to the outside world. What will happen in October? Of course, to be very certain about the future is a little bit dangerous, but the signals I'm receiving is that the big team, which was a part of the approval, is still a big team, and working very well together in order to safeguard that the team will ensure that this will be adopted in October. I think in any decision we take, you can say yes, you can say no. If you say yes, do we have a problem or a solution? If we say yes, let's say we assume we do that, of course, there will be a follow-up. Some of the signals giving, you know, this is not fixed, this is not fixed. But then again, we have a process. We will also consider a work plan. The long list of follow-up, we will do together. We will solve it together. That is the example we set to the other outside world. If we say no, have we solved the problem? Yes or no? No, of course, we are stuck with the problem. We have then given the signal that we don't want the IMO to be the global regulator for shipping on this issue. That is how we want the IMO to behave. We have not certainly solved the climate change. You know, to reduce emissions is something we actually can do something about. I meet industry all the time. I always meet that we have this solution, we have this solution. If we don't respond to the climate change, we are in the multilateral solution. We are then, of course, questioning the multilateral solution, but we also allow climate change to continue to escalate. And that is really difficult to do something about. You know, it's a limit to much you can do on adaptation. So this is the opportunity we have, all of us, to solve it in October, and I feel quite good about it still.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Well, on that hopeful note, which I think we can all hopefully agree with, I mean, I think you may have noticed, unfortunately, we did lose the panelist and another one before that, which happens with these incredibly distinguished panels. But I do think it would be remiss of me then if I didn't ask just a bit more about kind of the global nature of the agreement and how developing countries can be supported in hopefully implementing it. And I don't know if that's one David would like to start on maybe, but open to any of the panelists on that.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I just want to again reiterate, I think, which a common theme that's coming across is very much this is an opportunity. You know, the WMO, our theme for World Maritime Day is our ocean, our obligation, our opportunity. This is an opportunity, as we've heard, to really kind of move forward, to do something serious about climate change. As many of you will be familiar, a key part of the net zero framework is a pricing mechanism which would result in revenue that would go into a net zero fund. And that fund will then be able to be distributed to support those nations that might need assistance in this transition to a greener, cleaner future. Again, you know, what we're looking to adopt next month is the framework. We then need to work out the details. And I heard someone say yesterday, the devil is in the details, always is. And so and how that fund will work is part of those ongoing negotiations that will continue after October. But it has always been envisaged that there will be a way to support those countries that might need additional assistance in making this transition to be able to do that.
Yeah. Don't know if any of the other panelists wanted to add anything on that? No? Okay. I'm wondering then maybe just because we've got a lot of the maritime industry itself in the room, and I'm sure all of the industry is looking to the regulators to tell them what they need to do. But I'm wondering from your side as, you know, regulators and policymakers sitting in the room making the agreement, if you had one message for industry, or you could have industry do one thing to demonstrate that they're ready for this transition, what would that be? Anyone want to take that? Swinan, go for it.
First of all, I have to say that I'm quite impressed with the large part of the industry. Because I think it's important these days, you need to have a predictable framework so you can have this planning, long-term planning. And especially when there are, let's say, when you are in a kind of difficult global situation, which we are facing in many areas, then many can have doubts on, let's say, shall we really plan for this decarbonization and all these kind of things, you know. And I'm encouraged to see that the industry is still planning for that to happen and doing their you know, projects. And then, of course, sometimes it's difficult to take an investment decision. So my message is, do not have doubt on the future when it comes to decarbonizations. The IMO will do it. On the national basis, there will also be stimulation for decarbonization and requirements for decarbonization to supplement the global efforts. There may be other kind of regional thing. We have, of course, the EU, etc. So do not be in doubt on what you are planning for will be a business case for you, because if you have enough confidence in us, what we are doing, I think just keep on your way forward.
Brilliant.
That is the message.
Yeah. Rosie, I don't know if you want to add to that, or?
So, I mean, two things, I think. Looking first to the immediate adoption of the net zero framework, we need your support. We need this to be a whole of sector effort. So please, in this process, do make your voices heard. There are many industry representatives that are in the room at the IMO, but there are also plenty of opportunities to contribute to that debate. So please do let us know what you think. Let us know what challenges you're facing. I think the second thing is the need for data, really. I mean, and if you look back at the history of the IMO, it has in the past been one of kind of regulating after something has happened. You know, the original example being Titanic, which gave us the Safety of Lives at Sea Convention. And we need to avoid a situation where we end up looking to regulate after the fact. So we need to understand where the sector is going, understand what challenges kind of alternative fuels, hydrogen, ammonia, methanol present, and really get ahead of the challenges around those new fuels. So we need not to be regulating what's already out there, but what is currently being designed, which means we need the evidence, we need the data in order to do that well.
If I may, oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. You go first.
Yeah.
If I may add, of course, adopting the framework next month is not the beginning of the journey. We've been on a pathway to energy efficiency in the maritime sector for some time now. But in any industry sector, there's always a risk that people say, oh, I don't want to be the first mover. Being a first mover is dangerous. There's a high risk in that. One of the things that the framework will put in place a global framework where, in fact, first movers are rewarded. And so the message to industry is, please don't be afraid to be that first mover. Continue to invest in innovation, in new ways of doing business, because there will be benefits from that.
Brilliant. Did you want to add?
Yeah, speaking about the industry, as I said before, it's very important, and as Rosie said as well, it's very important to listen to them. It's very important you mentioned that it's not the beginning. As far as the dialogue with the industry, I think it's a beginning in the sense that we have to encourage them, but at the same time, as Rosie said, we have to understand them, and we have to understand proactively where the market is going, where the sector is going, because we have seen also, you know, in times of geopolitical turmoil, etc., that there are solutions that are implemented on the ground. I mean, without us regulating anything, in the sense that when you had the crisis in the Red Sea, there was an alternative route used de facto, I mean, going through South Africa, Cape Town, etc. So there are situations where there are solutions on the ground that we have to predict and we have to include in our own planning. And I'm sure that as IMO, as EU, all these organizations are taking into account this.
I think that's a very clear message there from all of our panelists to the industry to move forward and, you know, take that step out there, but also then, I guess, to make your voice heard and to really communicate. And on the making your voice heard, I don't know if we've got a roving mic so we can do Q&A from the audience. I'm looking down the back. Maybe not. Oh, great. Okay. You've been putting questions in the iPad. Well, not in the, you know, anyway, I've got them in the iPad. So, your questions, let's see. Well, here's, I guess, coming back to maybe using the assumption that we're all working on and working together towards that in October we will have the net zero framework. What happens next? How is the maritime sector going to evolve over the next 5 to 10 years? Does anyone want to have a go at future gazing?
I just said that I don't know.
I mean, that's definitely the easiest answer. Since it's a hard question, Sveinung, I think you're going to volunteer yourself.
What's happened next after the adoption? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. How will the maritime sector evolve over the next kind of 5
interesting
to 10
question.
years?
Now, I think you see early signals of this already today. I think what is fundamental when it comes to shipping. Shipping serves the global economy, of course. And what we see today when it comes to the global production and consumption patterns, which is actually defining global shipping, I think that will maintain, you know, there are always development. So meaning there will also be shipping services in the future with then less emissions and eventually net zero emissions. I have no doubts that there will be shipping also serving the global economy in 2030, 2040 and 2050 and onwards. Now the technological solutions will be different. The alliances and how this is organized will be a little bit different, maybe also the contracts. And also the economy and the whole thing will be a little bit different. But that is not only for shipping. That is also for the other sectors, meaning that this will not be the only sector decarbonizing. This will not be the only sector driving the energy transition. What will be new for shipping is, of course, we will be in need to compete more on energy compared to what we have been used to, because we have been using residual fuel oil. Now we will need to compete with other sectors on the energy sources for shipping. That will be new. So I think long-term investors need also to plan long-term how they secure their energy supply. So you know, if I shall predict the future, actually I see prosperous opportunities for maritime industry. Only it will be greener. Yeah.
Excellent. I like that message. And I think, you know, we focus very much on this panel on climate, rightly so. It's obviously a very big issue and consuming a lot of the IMO's time. But alongside that, there's obviously going to be all kinds of crew training, safety, all these other issues that are also absolutely key. Yeah. And I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but how is the IMO managing to deal with, you know, you don't just agree the net zero framework, you have to look at shipping as a whole holistically. Would love to hear, how is that going? David, tell us.
Well, I think for those who might have had the opportunity to attend the IMO yesterday, they might have heard the Secretary General speak to this very matter. And he made it very clear that the Marine Environment Protection Committee under the IMO and the Maritime Safety Committee under the IMO are not mutually exclusive. There's very clearly MARPOL and SOLAS need to really be integrated. And yes, we are training and ensuring the safety of mariners, ensuring the safety of port facilities, etc. That will continue to be a strong focus for the IMO, and that is ever evolving. And has been and will continue to be. And as we move into new technology, there will continue to be a strong focus on that at the IMO and that clear integration between those two committees of the IMO.
Brilliant. we have a lot of questions coming in, and I don't know if we just haven't convinced the audience of how the net zero framework is just obviously going to be adopted in October. But there's still quite a few pushing on, like asking, for example, if everyone had to pick a percentage chance that it was going to get adopted, what would the panelists' view be? I mean, you know, I can take my privilege as a chair and say, I'm going to put it at 85% that it will get through. But I don't know, as we kind of come towards kind of the end of this panel, if the panelists would like to give us their kind of final words and hopes for October. And, you know, as we said, there's a lot of industry in this room. How do we all work together to really make sure that this historic moment is not lost in October? Maybe I'm putting too much of a... I'm supposed to be neutral as a chair, but I'm clearly not. Sorry. So, you know. Who wants to hazard a guess first?
I think, as Sveinung said, it's about teamwork. And my other fact about this place is, if you haven't seen the plaque on the wall, that in 1946 the first meeting of the UN General Assembly took place here. So we've got a great history here, and one that I hope will inspire us to do good work in October, because, you know, the UN is here to help us meet global challenges, and the nature of those global challenges has evolved since 1946, and it's got more and more complicated. I think, as Yanis has said, the interplay between climate change and security, for example, is adding huge complexity to those challenges. But at the end of the day, climate change is one of, if not the greatest challenge that is going to face the world in coming decades. So we need to stand up to that, and we need to work together in order to come out of October with a good result that will, as Sveinung says, lead us forward, not back.
Great. Sveinung, can I add to that?
If you can say something, because I will not aim at repeating myself, but some of you are familiar with IMO processes and some are not. I will just convey one important message. There is no second chance. This is it. There is not an alternative instrument out there. There is not let's say, okay, if you don't do this, we have something else. No, there is nothing else. So meaning, I think that is alluding to how important that is. And then I will join Rosie in to continue the teamwork, and also, you know, to have this look into the opportunity with this positive statements, and, you know, and that we all together spread this positivism towards what we are doing in October. So that is, you know, my message. Percentages, chances, and I will not go into that. But I said it before. I said it before the MPC. Can I tell you? Okay. So I was interviewed in Singapore. What are the chances? I said 80-20. Okay, because the 20 is simply we stumbled because it became too much at the very end. And then we were far away from an agreement. Remember, far away, but we managed. And, you know, we made it. Now I will not say anything about percentage, but, you know, I think to build upon, let's say, the wide cooperation, which I know is between member states on these issues, then I feel quite confident. So, yeah.
Okay, great. David, you want any final words?
Final words. Yeah, multilateralism can be complex in any format. We know that there are some member states who think the framework goes too far. There are others who think it doesn't go far enough. And the whole purpose of multilateralism is to have that conversation. The IMO is confident that member states will not let perfect be the enemy of good, and that the framework will be adopted.
Brilliant. Yanis?
Just to say that working together and teamwork, as Rosie said, is how I earn my living for 30 years and even more. So for me, it's very easy to understand that in this case also we have to stick together and we have to work in the different international fora where we, depending on the membership of course, but also at the global level, as you mentioned just now, because the United Nations, despite the fact that you know, there are disagreements and it's not easy you know, to have a concerted view on anything, on everything, an agreement on everything, is still a forum, and IMO is a representation of that because it's part of the United Nations system where states can get together and work solutions that can be really implemented on the ground. In this particular case, it's not the ground, it's the sea, so that we can all live with, and also we can advance our common goals, especially the alarming situation that we all have to face as far as climate change is concerned. Thank you.
Brilliant. Well, that's, I'm afraid, all we have time for. But I mean, I just think hopefully you're all coming away the same way I am with this very hopeful message. And, you know, as someone who works in climate change day to day, you don't often get a panel where you have full agreement and full hope, and you get to walk away going, there's going to be this historical agreement. Obviously, there's still a lot more work to be done, as I think everyone has acknowledged. But that just leaves it to really thank our incredibly distinguished panel for all of their very clear, hopeful, and insightful opinions on everything shipping. So thank you all. Okay, and with that, I'm going to hand back.
Thank you very much to the panel and, of course, to Aoife for chairing it as well. Thank you. We've got a short break now. After the break, we've got some breakout sessions. So if people could make their way to their favoured breakout session by 11:15, please. We have a breakout on investment in Robert Perks, which is behind the showcase on level 1. We also have a breakout on research, which is in George Thomas, behind the showcase in level 1. We have a breakout on fuels, which is in the Aldersgate room on the lower ground floor, and a breakout on regulation, which is here. Please go and have a lovely break, do some networking, chat about what you've heard, and see you in your breakout room. Thanks very much, everyone.
Everybody, if anybody's at the back wants to join in, please take a seat and we'll start in a second. Okay. All right, I think we'll kick off. We're running about 5 minutes late, so I'll make a start, I think, and maybe some people will join from the back. Great. Good morning, everybody. Very pleased to welcome you to one of the breakout sessions that we're running today, and this one is focusing on regulations and the regulatory framework, which is kind of required for the sector to transition. I'm Eamon Byrne, Deputy Director for Maritime Environment and Decarbonisation, a role which I share with Debbie Owens, who was the compere for this morning, and the team are around and about if anybody's got any questions or anything. I'm really excited by this panel today. We've got colleagues from across the regulation and innovation landscape, which is really important when we're trying to develop all those projects through UK Shore, whilst also developing policy and regulation in the department. So I'll do a brief introduction, then I've got Several questions which I'll talk through with the panel. There should be a QR code. There's an opportunity for you to add questions there, and then if we get some time at the end, I promise that we'll try and cover some of those. So a very quick introduction to the panel. We have Virginia McVeigh, which I'm sure most of you know, is the Chief Exec of the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency, representing the organisation I expect most of us think when we talk about maritime regulation here in the UK. Not the only one, but the one I expect most of us think about. We have James Fordyke, the Managing Director of the Lloyd's Register Decarbonisation Hub, and he's kindly offered to touch on the traditional role of class when the sector's transitioning, and provide an insight into the kind of global maritime innovation sector. We've got Rona MacDonald, which joins us from the British Ports Association, where she's a Senior Sustainability Advisor, also supports the ports sector, working internationally through the role of Policy and IMO Liaison Officer with the International Association of Ports and Harbours. And we're going to get from Rona a ports perspective when it comes to regulation and innovation. And then finally, we're joined by Neil Ryan, who's the Head of Land and Maritime Transport at Innovate UK, one of our principal delivery partners at the Department for UK Shore. And he's going to be touching on the interface between innovation and regulation, and pulling on his expertise that he's got through Innovate UK, playing in lots of other sectors, transport included. So what we're hoping today is get a kind of flavour for the current regulatory landscape, better understanding of how regulation's changing to accommodate the transition to zero-emission operations, and to get some context on how innovation is being supported both domestically and internationally through regulatory bodies. So firstly, thank you all very much for being part and the main attraction of today. I have to say that to every panel that I chair, though, so don't. But I'm going to start with a bit of an icebreaker, if I may, which is decarbonising the shipping industry isn't going to be an easy task, both domestically and internationally. But there's a lot of great work going on at the moment. So to kind of get us started, I thought each of you might share a quick positive example that you've seen over recent years on that progression to decarbonisation. And I'll kind of do it in order, if that's okay. Yeah, so Rona.
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning, everyone. So yeah, there's incredible examples out there of UK ports that are beginning to decarbonise their own operations, but I think it's also important to note the role that ports will play in the wider energy transition of the global supply chain, as well as shipping as well. And we see that in some of the ports across Scotland. We look at Cromarty Firth, for example. They've just received their licence to go ahead with their £111 million Phase 5 project, which for offshore wind, which will see the expansion of 400 metres of quayside, and this can leverage their proximity to offshore wind to help decarbonise sectors in close proximity to the port, but also provide them with the necessary electricity to decarbonise their own operations. So there's plenty of really positive examples going on.
Thank you, Rona. Virginia.
Morning. One great example is probably on the Thames. We have certified in MCA 3 hybrid vessels, and one sort of unique to the UK, a passenger vessel, the Orbit Clipper, takes 150 passengers. So probably in this sector we see the greatest acceleration at this moment in time. But if I may, two more to mention. One, in terms of products, it was striking in the Noor shipping event that we saw products that had begun with a huge amount of UK government support move from the UK pavilion out onto the main floor. And the piece that I never want to forget is the people. So the acceleration, which I hope to return to again, in what we're providing for our people, seafarers, in their work.
Yeah, it's a very good point. So maybe we'll touch on that a bit later. James.
Yeah, hi, good morning, everyone. Actually, you've set me up perfectly by talking about seafarers, because almost, and we didn't even plan it.
We did
It
not
happened
plan it.
organically. The one I wanted to talk about happened yesterday, which was the launch of the Maritime Just Transition Task Force Seafarer Competency Frameworks for ammonia, methanol, and hydrogen. And I want to raise it not only because in and of itself it's a great deliverable, it is the launching of the recommendations for how seafarers need to be trained and ultimately certificated to demonstrate competence if they want to sail on these vessels. But so the deliverable is good in and of itself, but also the way in which it came about is an example of positive action within this space, because there was a bit of a collective recognition that there would be a need for these skills to ultimately update the STCW Convention, but the route towards generating it was highly leveraged towards knowledge within the industry, not knowledge within the regulator or the representatives of the regulator. And a sort of cross-industry, cross-regulator coalition voluntarily came together, found the funding to create this work. We were deeply involved in that. And then industry experts across the technology landscape volunteered their time to contribute and created this framework, which is really robust, has been presented to the IMO's Human Factors Training and Watchkeeping Subcommittee, and more or less endorsed, and will now form the basis of how the STCW Convention will be updated. So that's a really great example. It was something coming together, recognizing a problem, and not waiting till the last moment for a regulation to force it.
Yeah. I think that's a theme that will probably come out a lot, not just on this panel, but through the day, is that collaboration, isn't it, between the industry and regulators and all the other interested parties is required if nothing else. Neil.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning. Great to be here. My positive stat is one that I use quite a bit, actually, and it's in relation to the UK Shore programme. And that's the positivity that I see around the response to industry for innovation. As those of you that are close to UK Shore will know, we've gone from a small programme initially up to the culmination of the announcement of the new programme this week. And the response from industry, which has been really significant, has enabled us to unlock that government funding, because without that evidence of demand for innovation, right across the UK, I might add as well, it becomes more difficult to justify the investment for the government to make. So the response from industry to innovation opportunities, to the call to action around clean maritime has been a great thing and constantly motivates me.
Brilliant, quite right. And hopefully we're going to pull on that as we spend, in case anybody's not heard, the additional 448 million that we have over the coming years. All right, so moving on a little bit then. So I think the IMO, the kind of modelling that underpins all the work that the IMO is doing, that the bulk of the energy transition is going to occur in probably from the 2030s onwards. Are regulations on track to provide certainty that ship owners, industry and operators need? And I'm going to target Virginia and James on this one, if I may.
You first.
Well, I know we're amongst friends, but I do think that Eamon is what we would say locally, chancing his arm when he asks a lawyer to confirm that there's certainty. But I'll kind of take it. We have moved from an environment where there were really edge of case innovations that we were discussing, and we are now seeing it move to a more mainstream environment. And when we talk about on track, I wanted to move through what the track actually looked like. So when we started out in 22, we had MGN 679 and the nuclear regs. Then we moved to 23 and we had the workboat code, and we always had MGN 664 for exceptionality, for innovation. Then in 2024, we had MGN 550, and that was around electrical installations and lithium-ion batteries. And in 2025, we have MGN 702, which is the general exemption in relation to mass under 2.5 metres. So that's the track record as it was. And then what we want to do is we want to turbocharge that going forward. We've seen the announcement in relation to UK Shore, and we are about to launch, which I will return to, the Innovation Hub for the UK in the MCA. But it is also about seafarers. We've touched upon that. And together with academia, government representatives, the colleges, seafarer unions, and the Merchant Navy Training Board, we have this year, as schools started back, rolled out the most comprehensive world-leading seafarer training syllabus in the world. And when we're looking at that, we are also supporting seafarers with a 30-day equivalency course, which has bunkering procedures, simulator training, yard time during vessel construction, and recognised training courses for hydrogen. So again, this combination in terms of vessel certification, support for innovation, and to make sure that we have the trained seafarers who can engage with that.
I think that's a really valid, and there's a really important point you make there, which is this isn't just about the fuels and the tech that will work and developing them. It's about the system around it, and you touched on seafarers in particular and skills and everything else, a really important part, I quite agree. And really interesting about the Innovation Hub. Hopefully that will go on to really, really great things. And just to flag that the Innovation Hub you mentioned is not just going to be about clean maritime, it's going to touch on some of the other things. And you mentioned, was it 72, which I think is mass related, or is it 550? Yep. So it's not just about clean maritime. There's a lot of challenges I think the Hub is going to be looking at. Thank you. James, did you want to add?
Yeah. Well, look, naturally, your mind would go to this question, to the question of the net zero framework and what happens next month. For me, personally, this is now a question of politics rather than the policy itself and rather than the structure of the net zero framework. And I'm not a politician, so I'm not well placed to inform the audience on or to project what happens with the politics. So I'm not actually going to go there. It sounds like slopey shoulders, but we have to monitor and see what happens. Yeah. And to answer the question, are we on track, depends massively on whether that policy framework is adopted or is not adopted. But to try to add something meaningful to the question that you ask, instead, I'll talk a little bit about the parallel development of safety regulations, but I also want to talk a little bit about the development of national energy policy and energy regulations in support of green hydrogen economies. So on the safety side, one of the great things about our industry is that as we look to accelerate the implementation of technology, if the harmonized regulations are not yet ready, we have the platforms and the ability to address risks and to allow the technology sector to implement first projects. And that applies equally to the people who have ordered the first methanol ships, the first ammonia ships. Many of those were designed and then passed through their compliance regimes on the basis of safety cases conducted in lieu of the available regulations before the guidelines were published. And so that's a great precedent for making sure that the industry can act before certain guidelines are in place. But where we are now, with several hundreds of these ships having been ordered and at various stages of maturity through the design cycle, and with regulations catching up and in place, we see an opportunity to reevaluate whether there's scope to standardize approaches to mitigation of risk. And that's something that we work on a lot. So it's just continuing that development cycle of regulations and the maturity of regulations. So there's space to work there, but that's not a barrier to the success of adoption in 2030. That's just the natural ongoing learning process of regulatory readiness and regulatory fitness for purpose. But that needs to happen and is happening. So then I'll go onto the question of energy policy, because this is something that we see at the Hub particularly as really super important. The jurisdiction of the IMO, even if the net zero framework does come into existence and enters into force, has a limited purview over influencing the energy sector. And before the industry really can have the confidence that it needs to place the orders for the ships that it wishes to run on, there has to be a degree of visible certainty that the fuels are going to be there. And if we've learned anything from our attempts to address that question to date, it has been that the aggregation of maritime demand alone has not yet proven to be a particularly compelling case to the energy sector. So indeed, the participants of the energy sector who have responded to it have tended to be the smaller startups who are looking for acceleration funding, maybe under UK Shore or others, and that's great. But when you're talking about scale of provision to the industry, there are challenges there. So the call to the question you ask of are the regulations on track, the call is really to continue to work to merge maritime regulations with national energy policies so that maritime may continue to play a credible role as a future off-taker from an energy system transformation. And that's something that we don't have a lot of experience doing as the industry, choosing to collaborate with our parallel industries in order to achieve a greater outcome.
That's a beautiful segue to my next question, actually, because we often focus on the vessels, but the ports have a really, really important role to play, and particularly in that interface, I think, between the energy and the vessels and their operations. So I wanted to ask you, Rona, are you seeing more interest from ports and their customers and the use of alternative fuels? And do you think that there's enough information and enough clarity of change and high quality information out there for ports to respond to those customer expectations? And what are those changes that you're seeing happening?
Yes, so I think firstly touching upon that element, the ship-to-shore interface and the customers, I think firstly ports in the UK, the sector is very fragmented, which has its benefits, but also means that different ports will be playing different roles in the decarbonisation of the sector. And with that, some ports are not likely going to be that point of contact. Customers will likely be going to those fuel suppliers for that sort of information. And also in the UK, traditionally, they've not been typical bunker hubs, but we might see that change or likely see that change over time given the low energy density of these fuels. So there's lots of opportunities there for ports. I would say anecdotally at the moment, not seeing that demand there, but as I said, that we might see that in the future, whether that's on bunker barges or on the quayside. But I think going back to what I said about the positive things that ports are doing, and it's important to talk about biofuels and LNG as transitional fuels, and for UK ports those are going to be important going forward. We have many ports now switching to HVO in their own operations and their harbour vessels as well, because at the moment that is the most cost-effective solution, the drop-in fuel that is available to them. So I think it's important that we don't discount those fuels at this stage, but yeah, as I said, it's still uncertainty there.
Really is. Thank you.
Yeah, if I may, it's interesting listening both right and left, because when you use the word certainty, in engagement with industry, when they talk about certainty, it very often is in relation to energy supply. Mm-hmm. And when they talk about innovation, it's interesting that the words that are used are the same words that are used in terms of day-to-day survey and inspection across the fleet. People want consistency. So they want to have a degree of predictability with consistency, but they also want, here's the healthy tension, pragmatism. And I think as we move forward, healthy degrees of consistency in terms of nothing out of left field, but also that pragmatism that will really enable innovation.
Yeah. Well, let's start to try and use that word consistency more than clarity and certainty maybe, but it's a very valid point, I think. Neil, if I may turn to you then in that case, because that's a lovely segue. You've got a different role compared to the fellow panellists. Perhaps you could share what Innovate UK and UKRI does at a very high level and touch upon what that interface with the regulatory regime and what that means for innovation.
I can do, thank you. Yes, I want to start my answer by saying we're not a regulator. I felt the need to get that caveat in.
So now you can tell them what they should do.
Yeah, absolutely. But I have got some positive things to say. So I'll tackle the first part of your question. So Innovate UK is the UK's innovation agency. We work across the UK and across all sectors of the economy to not only provide funding to innovative companies, but also provide wraparound support. We deliver a whole range of programs across many, many sectors, including the UK Shore programme. Many of those programs interface with regulators or regulatory issues of some shape or another. UKRI is our parent organisation. That's the UK's kind of main arm's length body for investing in science, innovation, R&D, and the people that make it happen across the UK. UKRI has a very large budget each year, reflecting the UK's importance as a science superpower. Anywhere between £8 and £9 billion per year is the investment from UKRI. Innovate UK is the business-facing part of UKRI. We are the only part of UKRI that provides funding and support directly to innovative companies based in the UK of all shapes and sizes. So to answer the question, so we work with projects and companies to deliver innovation. We provide them funding. So we have the privileged position of seeing the kind of first-hand consequences of how companies are trying to develop new technology, get those to market, and all the barriers that exist in doing that. You know, the commercial realities, the competition realities, regulation is part of that, skills is part of that. So we're able to see kind of first-hand across a whole range of projects and companies in a particular area, the common themes and common barriers. And within the UK Shore programme, we do have a feedback loop to colleagues in the MCA, not only around individual projects where regulatory discussions are ongoing around developing demonstration vessels and getting them into the water. And you've heard of one example already, the Orbit Clipper here on the Thames. So we hear individual project level and company level discussions. We hear the project's kind of side of the story, and then we hear the regulator's side of the story as well. And that feedback loop is really, really important because we can see it across loads of projects at any one time. So we can spot kind of themes and trends, and then that enables us to then kind of evolve the regulatory approach and see what we can do differently and better in the future.
So a very quick follow-up question, if I may. So for those organisations that are stepping out on that research journey, what advice would you give them when it comes to thinking about regulation?
Yeah, so they need to engage early with the regulator. One of the key things that we always see and always say, the earlier you engage with the regulator, the better. And the more expert advice that you can get as early as possible, the better, particularly for the smaller companies that are perhaps going through a regulatory process for the first time. And of course, in programmes like UK Shore, that's precisely what we want to do. We want to support those innovations and those companies that are perhaps outside the maritime sector, but to bring them in because they can help us address the things that we want to address and the goals that we want to realise. So yeah, get the advice that you can, speak to people in the ecosystem as much as possible, and engage with the regulator.
Thank you, Neil. Okay, I've got a couple more questions for the whole panel, and then if there is any questions that you would like asking, I think there's a codes, there you go, so please do put them on, and then hopefully we'll have a chance for a couple of those questions. But before we get to there, I think we've touched on, it's quite clear, it's quite a complex picture out there, I think. And this is kind of a question for all of you. And there's an awful lot of work going on across the whole sort of regulatory and innovation landscape. I guess what we're talking about is how it all fits together. Do you think that regulatory picture is becoming clearer as we sort of navigate through this transition? And I guess a bit of a follow-up, what else might help? So does anybody want to start on that particular? Is that a really tricky question?
No, I think without being Pollyanna about it, it is becoming clearer. We do want increased challenge. It was interesting recently, we bring all of the seafarer charities together twice a year to have a conversation, And very unexpectedly, when I had asked, what's one of the biggest concerns of seafarers, and I'm always expecting to hear about connectivity because it can be very isolating. And what was actually raised was their concern in relation to handling future fuels. Mm-hmm. And we have been able to work with them. So as well as providing to industry recently a series of guidance documents, which we hope to expand, whether you're looking at hydrogen or methanol or battery power. And similarly, we're putting that out to seafarers. So we understand the demand for increased clarity, and I think there is some evidence that we are moving in that direction. But I am aware as well, not only with seafarers and the need for clarity, but also too with insurance. For example, when we have conversations about the future and potential for nuclear. So some evidence of greater clarity. We know the work in the IMO with cargo conversations recently and with MEPC coming up later in the autumn. Much more to do, but some evidence I think beginning, and all of this requires that collaboration that has been a constant refrain.
Thank you, Virginia. Does anybody else want to run it?
Yeah, I think just from the port's perspective, I think our concern is about regulatory complexity, and we've touched on the IMO Net Zero framework that will hopefully be adopted in October, but that alongside these other unilateral regimes such as the UK ETS and the EU ETS, there's concerns there for ports that this could result in market distortion with vessels maybe choosing to call at other ports due to potentially having to comply with 2 or 3 different schemes. So I think we're really concerned about that. And I know there's been talk, or it was mentioned by the government that if the IMO Net Zero framework is approved, that they would reconsider the UK ETS and maybe apply that less, I suppose. But again, it still creates that regulatory complexity. So we are concerned about that. And especially when a lot of the ports are still facing significant challenges to install the necessary infrastructure to support the shipping side. And when we look at shore power and electrification, and we do welcome the recent announcement from government for the funding from UK Shore, which is very much needed for ports. And we look at ports across the UK that have installed shore power. There's few examples there, and the ones that are progressing with that is with the support from government funding. So we just need more clarity and don't want to add to the complexity with multiple schemes.
Yeah. There's so many different strands we could go down. We could be here for all morning, I think. But James, do you want to add anything from LR's?
All I'd add is that I think if we're honest with ourselves, we are at an inflection point, and some pathways appear to offer clarity, and other pathways appear to do the opposite. You mentioned EU ETS as an example, so picking up on that one. If the IMO Net Zero framework is adopted and enters into force, then the European Commission have a current statutory mandate to reevaluate to what extent that policy package should apply to maritime. And they will make that decision on the basis of evaluating the parity between the IMO Net Zero framework and their own ambition. So that doesn't mean that they will choose to withdraw it from applicability to the maritime sector, but they are committed to evaluate whether they need to adjust it, to align it, because they are bought into to not creating a dual taxation agreement. That's a fundamental unifying principle. Yeah. So, with adoption, clarity towards reconciliation. Without adoption, that disappears, and then what does China do with their ETS scheme, and what do all the other ones do? Everything is possible. So really, we're at an inflection point.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I've noted down my view, which is that it's maturing rapidly, really. If I think about what we had in place when we ran the first innovation competition as part of the Clean Maritime demonstration competitions a few years ago, compared to what we have now and the relationship that we have with the MCA now for the demonstration projects in particular, we've made great progress. In the current, previous UK Shore programme, we had about 30 different demonstrations of vessels in the water. around the UK, and they all had to be verified and approved and checked before the demonstrations could happen. So we are making progress. Of course, there's more that we can do.
Mm. So, I mean, I could spend hours quizzing, and we've touched on, you've mentioned loads of different things like liability and insurance and risk, but I'm also getting quite a sense of there's been lots of progress and there's lots of opportunity as well, rather than risk, because risk brings opportunity. So I'm going to finish with, and then we'll wrap up, with one question, and it's a bit of a nice one to end on, which is, if you could describe in one word how you feel, and I know somebody's going to go beyond one word, but try for one word, how you feel about the future of maritime and its regulatory framework at the moment. So does anybody want to leap in?
Positive. I've said that already, but positive.
I knew I could trust on you to be positive, Neil. Thank you. Anybody else?
I would say with ahead of MEPC in the coming weeks and what needs to occur there, I would say I'm cautiously optimistic.
Cautiously optimistic.
Yeah.
I'll let two, but I'll let you off. That's okay.
Well,
James?
if lawyers get paid by the word, so I'll claim two. For now,
yeah.
One of the most recent additions to the dictionary has been the word inspo, which for those over 55 like me apparently just means inspiration. At this point, I feel inspo. But what I want to see, the most effective word in election campaigning, the recent summer research told us, was the word together. And I think in order to get to where we want to go, you've heard the word collaboration. So for now, inspired, but it has to be together.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Last word for you, James.
Well, I go through swings and roundabouts of which word I'm feeling in any given moment.
But after this panel.
But on this panel and during this week, I feel optimistic. And the reason I feel optimistic is because I feel like the engagements I've had this week, I've seen a lot of people with a very healthy, almost belligerent desire to keep going despite all the external forces being exerted upon us. So that leaves me feeling optimistic, actually.
Brilliant. Thank you. Well, thank you, everybody, for listening. There you have it. Cautious optimism, but definitely positivity there. Thank you, everybody. We have a short break now. If you would put your hands together to thank the panel. Thank you very much. Appreciated. We have a short break now, and then if you are sticking around, then please do come back for our sessions, which I think start at 12:15. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good.
Do you want to come find a seat? So I'm going to start in about 30 seconds or so. Awesome. I love the gentle hubbub as it dies down. Okay. Welcome everybody to what is the last portion of the talks that we've got prepared today. I thought I'd say some reflections about how the day's going so far, and then I'm going to invite our next speaker, Sarah. It's been really interesting so far. We've had a great talk from the new Minister, Keir Mather, and we've had some good breakout sessions, a really interesting international panel this morning, talking about collaboration and everything else. The breakout sessions, we had a regulation one in here, which was fascinating. I'd sort of describe it maybe as there's clearly loads of interfaces, but lots of opportunity and some very, very clear positivity, cautious optimism that we're sort of going in the right way. I hear that the fuels one was really interesting. I have got one note here which I'm slightly disappointed to hear, which is that apparently New Zealand wine could be approximately 2 or 3 pence more expensive for ships using ammonia. So there's clearly work for us to do on this. But that's not to say we should dismiss that, because costs is a really big part of this transition, but also some real positivity and some around the kind of policy certainty that we're beginning to get, both with what's going on in the IMO and within nations and individual nations as well. On the research breakout, discussions around new fundings, such as the Innovation Hub, and accelerating evidence evidence that is needed for policy making and everything else. And then we had an investment panel as well, which was highlighting the need for affordable finance and collaboration. And this is one I've heard throughout the week, actually, that things like regulation and innovation and development, all of those things the certainty around those things are definitely needed in order for the finance to be kind of unlocked, to mitigate that risk. And things like UK Shore is helpful in sort of leveraging that private sector investment where there is some of that risk. So some really interesting panel sessions. But thank you very much for joining for this session. I have behind me Sarah Sharples, who I know most of you will know, but I am going to do a very quick introduction, if I may. Sarah is the Department for Transport's Chief Scientific Advisor, but today is her last day. So it's really quite sad. I have to say, we've had a fantastic announcement this week about 448 million for UK Shore for the next few years, which was absolutely brilliant for us. We've got to go on and deliver that. But Sarah was instrumental in supporting us as we went through that spending review round. And she's going to be sorely missed in the department. And I did hear a rumour that Sarah said her last day has to be after Clean Maritime Days, so she can make this her last speech. I don't know if that's a true rumour, but let's assume it is. So I'm going to leave you in the safe hands of Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you. When I explained to my husband that I was making the choice to finish in the role of Departmental Chief Scientific Advisor today and start in my new role at the University of Manchester on Monday without taking any break in between, because it was London International Shipping Week and Clean Maritime Day, he did look at me slightly aghast, but he is now very, very clear that the most important thing that is happening in London this week is Clean Maritime Day and London International Shipping Week. So thank you so much for indulging me in enabling this to be my last formal act, actually, as Departmental Chief Scientific Advisor. I am really pleased to have the opportunity to talk to you today about UK Shore as a programme, as an initiative, and why it is so impactful, not just for the maritime sector, but for science and innovation, for transport decarbonisation more generally. It has been a genuine privilege to quote Rania Leontaridi, the Director General, who many of you will know, to witness the development of UK Shore from toddler to teenager. I really, really look forward to observing the progress from my external role into adulthood and into even more impact than we have already seen. It's always a really important choice within government as to how to support different sectors, both within transport and within industry generally. And so, rightly, we are very, very clearly held to account as to the rationale as to why initiatives like UK Shore are so important. So let me talk you through some of the really clear objectives of UK Shore. First of all, of course, and I'll talk about this a little bit more in a minute, UK Shore and the maritime sector have environmental impacts. And we need to reduce the environmental impacts which are negative for the impact on climate change and for human health. So the contribution of the maritime sector towards sustainability has always been at the core of the UK Shore initiative. But it is really important that we understand, and we see this in the government missions relating to growth, relating to clean energy, that we don't just think about the environmental considerations that are impacted by the innovations that come through UK Shore, but we also think about the role of the maritime sector and the innovations that can be perpetuated through engagement with the maritime sector on jobs, on UK and international prosperity and growth. One thing that has become increasingly apparent is the importance of the maritime sector to pull through our understanding of particularly hydrogen-based fuels or hydrogen-related fuels for other modes and other sectors. It is my view that the maritime sector will be and is the first to be actively deploying these types of fuels for a number of reasons. Partly the sort of almost sort of a diverse ecosystem that we have within maritime makes it really rich pickings to be able to try things, to develop them and pull them through to implementation, as you will see, more rapidly than in other types of sectors where things are regulated in a way that is managed much more through a smaller number of very large organisations. The diffuse nature of the maritime sector, the beautiful sort of collection of lots and lots of small organisations can be a real strength when it comes through to pulling through innovation. But it's also extraordinarily important when we are funding things from the government purse that we are very, very clear about the impact that this money is having. So evaluating what works, where and why, and then sharing that information in an open and pre-competitive way is also absolutely core to the UK Shore Initiative. So let's just remind ourselves of the role of maritime within the greenhouse gas emissions considerations. The maritime sector and the greenhouse gas emissions generated by domestic maritime alone are equivalent to 5.5% of the total UK domestic transport emissions. Now, 5.5% sounds quite small, but when we are dealing with transport decarbonisation, we need to take a holistic approach. You will be familiar with work that's happening in the automotive section that takes up more of the percentage of the greenhouse gas emissions. But we know that maritime is a hard-to-abate sector. It's a sector that is diffuse and diverse. There are different vessel types that need different solutions. We know that different solutions and different economic models will mean that we can't automatically have what might be the best engineering solution in all parts of our transport system. We need to take a systems perspective and understand not only which solutions work best for which parts of the sector, but how we can appropriately produce and distribute energy in a way that's the right answer for the UK economy as a whole. Sometimes that means that some sectors might actually have to take a slightly harder to apply solution because it doesn't necessarily have the economic opportunity to be able to adopt fuels that might be being used in other contexts. The way in which I would apply this within the maritime sector is that sustainable liquid fuels, sustainable aviation fuels are obviously a drop-in opportunity that could be used in the maritime sector, but then we're setting up aviation and maritime to compete with each other. And so thinking about what the right answers are for the maritime sector is an extremely important consideration that we're looking at within UK Shore. We recognise that clean maritime technologies are still immature and they still require optimisation. Now, one of the really interesting things that I've learned about the maritime sector is there's still quite a lot to play for. There is still innovation and opportunity in reducing fuel consumption through some of the innovative design of vessels that I have seen some of you produce, as well as thinking about that more sort of revolution rather than evolution change to new fuels. And then we're in 2025 now. We talk about our approach as being to net zero 2050. Vessels that are on the seas now will still be with us in 2050. So we need to be thinking about retrofit solutions. We need to think about the longevity of the solutions we're implementing. And that's why it is so exciting to see the speed with which many members of the maritime sector have been able to adopt these new solutions. So I think if I press a button now, you're going to see a video that just shows some of the highlights from UK Shore so far. Right, do I need to press again? I'm going to press a button again.
The UK is a proud maritime nation with a rich heritage in maritime innovation, expertise and knowledge. In 2019, the sector was reported as having directly contributed £18.7 billion to our economy, supported over 200,000 jobs and facilitated 95% of the UK's global trade. However, the maritime sector is a major contributor to global greenhouse gas emissions. In 2022, UK domestic shipping alone was responsible for more greenhouse gas emissions than buses and rail combined, meaning that action needs to be taken on a national and global scale to tackle this challenge. That's where the Department for Transport's UK Shipping Office for Reducing Emissions, or UK SURE programme, comes in. Building on our history in maritime innovation and our leadership in tackling climate change, the UK is moving forward both domestically and with our global partners to accelerate the maritime sector towards net zero and cement the UK as a clean energy superpower, while delivering growth and skilled jobs. The UK SURE programme is funded by the UK Government's Department for Transport and delivered in partnership with Innovate UK and the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council, both part of UK Research and Innovation. UK SURE is investing in the research and development of clean maritime solutions and leveraging further investment from the private sector, with over £200 million already invested in over 150 projects. The programme is funding businesses, innovators and universities right across the UK, from Shetland and Orkney to the southwest of England and all points in between, including Northern Ireland, Wales and the Thames in London. 2025 is a hugely important year for the programme. It will see many of the UK SURE-funded projects demonstrate their technologies in the seas and rivers, at ports and at wind farms around the UK. The UK SURE programme is working with industry to develop the future technologies to inform policymaking, enable the sector to decarbonise and create the jobs, the economic growth and the skills of the future. Please join us in this mission. Find out more about the programme on our website.
So I hope that gave you just a flavour of how exciting the range of technologies are that are being delivered by you through UK SURE. I'm going to just try and talk through a couple of these examples in a little bit more detail. I will have to confess at this point that I can't read the slides over there, so I'm having to look at the details in front of me here. And thank you very much to the UK SURE team and to those of you who've developed this work, who know much more about the detail of this than I do. Being a Chief Scientific Advisor is the very definition of a role which is jack of all trades and master of none, and I'm going to demonstrate that right now. This particular case study is one that is extremely important because it is looking at the practicalities of hydrogen combustion. We know that hydrogen does have a role to play in the future economy of the UK energy system. We know that because it will either be used as a fuel in its own right, or it will be used as a feedstock for production, for example, of power-to-liquid solutions for sustainable fuels. But we also know that hydrogen can be a tricky customer that requires really great engineering innovation in order to address the fact that it's extraordinarily lightweight, it behaves differently when it encounters standard materials for distribution and storage, and the combustion temperature needs to be considered very, very carefully when it comes to making sure that we don't end up unintentionally producing NOx emissions. So what this particular programme has done is looked at the opportunity to run a hydrogen-fired auxiliary engine in sea trials on board a shipping vessel. It's been successful because the system has been designed, built and tested. And the bits that are so tricky, making sure that you've got the hydrogen injector and making sure that you've got the compression and the storage tank designed and built has been very, very fruitful. And so they're just in the process now of commissioning and installing this technology. A really important element here is that alongside this engineering development, we've also got the consideration of the understanding around hydrogen safety. We know that safety is something that is absolutely central to the maritime sector, and we need to make sure that we continue that high consideration of safety when it comes to our future fuels. The next example that we have is the clean hybrid alternative marine powertrain. And this aims to develop the engineering pipeline which helps us to test the options for suitability of different powertrain technology and to deliver and demonstrate examples on water. What we've been able to do through this programme is simulate thousands of different powertrain solutions, thus enabling us to identify the optimal configuration and the performance trade-offs for adoption. This means that we've then been able to move towards the point where a sustainably fuelled e-methanol hybrid electric option, and we are seeing hybrid technologies emerge even more in both maritime and the aviation sector, being demonstrated on water and at seawork. And then I have to work out which one it is. It's this one. Here we go. So shore power is one of those intractable, really tricky problems. The quotation that Eamon told me and I have sort of kept in my head for many, many years now is that if you have just one cruise ship plugged in at one port for 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, then you will consume 3 times the electricity consumption that Stansted Airport produced and consumed in a single year. So the numbers and the scale of the requirements around shore power are extraordinary. The Camel Laird Shore Power Project has aimed to install a smart and predictively controlled shore connection, which would be capable of supplying vessels, supporting wharf operations, utilising renewables and exporting to the grid, so having that two-way connectivity. The project's been successful and has now afforded the opportunity to deliver shore power across a range of commercial and MOD consequences. So these are just 3 examples. I know in that exhibition there are tens and tens more of examples like this. So why has UK Shore worked? What do we need to learn from what has worked? And how do we make sure we take that learning through forward to the next iteration of UK Shore? The first thing I'll really pull out with UK Shore is its scale and its distribution. It is not taken for granted that we have the geographic distribution that you see represented in that map ahead of you. And this is different to other types of innovation that we see funded within the UK. Maritime has a real area of strength in this geographic distribution across the UK. Because not only does that mean that we are having impacts in different parts of the UK, but we are growing skills, expertise in those innovation communities in everywhere from the Orkney Islands to the Isle of Wight. What's really important, and something I will be, if I was still in the department, would be absolutely holding the feet to the flame of the UK Shore team, is that we continue to work with industry really strongly. Government funding should not be in perpetuity. It should be there to fill in the gap, to stimulate the market, and then allow the market to take over. That's what I know is the ambition of UK Shore. That's what I know is all of your ambitions from the industrial perspective as well. And so making sure that we continue to leverage private investment and come up with the appropriate schemes and approaches that makes maritime decarbonisation an attractive proposition for private investment is something that is also at the core of UK Shore. And we're creating jobs. So far, 750, but I have full confidence that there will be many, many more as a result of the continuation of UK Shore. But what's been going on behind the scenes? What has actually made this work, and what do we need to retain to make this work? Events like this aren't just an opportunity for us all to get together, see each other, learn about the latest sort of technologies. They form partnerships. It could be academic partnerships, such as the Clean Maritime Hub that is led by Tony Roskilly and has genuinely pulled together a brilliantly diverse academic community to work collectively in a way that we don't always see in academia. But we've also seen the partnership between government, between the research councils, and between industry as well. And long may that continue. It's absolutely fundamental. The clarity of purpose, I think, is really important. Clarity of the mission towards decarbonisation to address the climate change crisis that we are all experiencing, but also the purpose around the economic opportunity, the growth of companies that many of you represent. We've talked already about the place and the opportunity to really exploit the diversity of the maritime sector in its diversity and place. And of course, it is all about the people. One observation I will make: the maritime sector is not brilliant at diversity. As it's my last day, I would set you a challenge to continually hold yourself to account in thinking about what there is you can do to increase the diversity within this sector. Because the reason we need diversity in sectors is because if we don't have diversity, we miss out on brilliant people who help us to solve difficult problems. There are opportunities to improve diversity in many parts of the transport sector, but I will observe that if there's something you can do to keep me happy after I've gone, then do think about that diversity of this sector and what you can do as leaders and actors within the sector to really continue to improve that. So what comes next? We are absolutely delighted that we now have the opportunity to work with you, as we have done continually, to develop the next iterations of UK Shore. There will be further rounds of funding with which you're familiar, but I know that the teams will also be working with ministers to understand what the right forms of those approaches should be in order to make sure we're not just delivering the ambitions around the economy and around decarbonisation, but we're also making sure we've got the evidence we need in order to inform the right policy and regulatory interventions that help send those signals that then give confidence to private investments. But please do use today as the opportunity to start building your consortia and fill those ideas. If you'll indulge me, I want to say a final word. I live in Nottingham, I come from Nottingham, and I joked when I joined that I hadn't worked with the maritime sector at all. And I live in Nottingham, as far away as you can from the sea in the UK. And I have learned so much about the maritime sector. I think the maritime sector hides its light under a bushel. I think the maritime sector does not realise how important it is to the UK's wider missions of clean energy and growth. As I said before, maritime is the sector that will pull through a number of fuels first. Building that confidence about the sector and making sure that the sector is engaging with other sectors, is learning from other sectors, is drawing people in from other sectors and allowing people from the maritime sector to move and take a pathway to other sectors as well, I think could be really, really important. So please do take that confidence and build that love of the maritime sector with also a real pride that the maritime sector is absolutely instrumental in delivering our decarbonisation objectives for the UK. So thank you very much, and I look forward to the panel session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Some very clear messages there about, and I really like the one around continually holding yourselves to account. I absolutely love that. You also said that you were going to hold the team's feet to the flame, and I'm absolutely sure you'll do that whether you're in the department or not. So thank you very much. And I am going to steal the phrase, what was it, toddler to teenager for the programme? Love that. I'm going to love taking it through to adulthood. Thank you very much, Sarah. You're going to be greatly missed by the team and the department, but thank you for your support to get us where we are. It's been much appreciated. Right, we're a little bit behind time, but that was absolutely worth it. So, but we do have a really good panel, and if they are listening in the back, hopefully they will start making their way out now. I'm just going to rearrange myself a little bit here. Fantastic. If you would give them all a little bit of a hand. Fantastic. And, you will see on the back there, but just for anybody that needs it, we have on the panel here, we have Diane Gilpin, who's CEO and founder of Smart Green Shipping, Professor Tony Roskilly, who got a mention in Sarah's speech, who's the director of the UK National Clean Maritime Research Hub, Elaine Scott, who's head of Innovation Partnerships Port of Tyne, Sarah, who needs no second introduction, Claire Spooner, Director of Mobility at Innovate UK, and Professor Katrina Thompson, who's Director of Government Programmes, Artemis and Technologies. So what we wanted to do in this panel was have a real good mix of people and projects, both projects but also those in the sort of enabling framework of innovation in the space. And then we want to kind of explore a little bit around the world of innovation, what questions you might have about getting involved in that, and what their experiences are. So if I may start with a question for Katrina, Di and Elaine. As projects, I'm keen to hear your reflections, I think, in two ways. First, how did the support you got through UK Shore help your projects succeed? And then secondly, what do you think your top learnings for you and your organisations would be from that experience? Who wants to start?
So, shall I kick off?
Absolutely, please.
Yeah, no worries. So obviously at Artemis Technologies, we've been engaged in the Clean Maritime demonstration competitions, right from CMDC 1, which has been hugely important for us, taking us from feasibility studies through detailed design, developing our product range as well, and then finally into demonstration, and then rounding that all off with the ZEVI competition, which actually allowed longer scale demonstration, but infrastructure funding as well. And for us, that's something that's hugely important. You know, it's that early adopter who isn't going to want to pay for everybody else to upgrade the infrastructure. It's broken the back of that for us, and it's been really, really helpful to see that. So, you know, the support has been really invaluable, even actually consistently through the programme as well. You know, just how the funding has been managed through Innovate and monitored. It's been really useful learning experience for us as we've gone through the project that way. Plenty more to say, but I'll pass over.
Thanks, Katrina. So we started our journey with Innovate UK pre-COVID, pre-Shore, working with Drax as an end user for green shipping solutions, developing wind, where we sat and collaborated with ship owners. So we understood what the problems were that they were facing. What the CMDC 3 competition gave us specifically was the ability to address in the real world the challenges that the shipping industry brought to us, which is, okay, so theoretically, with the University of Southampton, with digital modelling, we can demonstrate that we can save up to 20% fuel on this route, on this ship for these particular customers. But nobody really believes that, and you need a huge amount of money to bend metal, to build wings. And then we were able to take that technology, install it on a ship, and then critically, we were able to do the safety and the robustness of the materials and the marine engineering, but then critically, we were able to charter our own vessel, a UK flagged vessel, over a period of time to be able to conduct formal sea trials, which no one else had been able to do. So rather than getting opportunistic data from being on a ship that was on its commercial journey, we went into a sea trial area, and we got a baseline from having the wing off, and then we did the same route again. So we were able to do that over weeks and get lots and lots of data, which was then processed and validated independently. And so that has been really critical to us.
I remember the launch well. It was great to see something that had been funded actually in the water.
It was great. Yeah,
it really was. Thank you, Elaine.
Okay, thank you. I think what might be quite useful is maybe if I just share a little bit about the Port of Tyne, in case you don't know where or what Port of Tyne does. So the Port of Tyne is just outside Newcastle. It's in terms of size, it's 650 acres. And we're also the authority for River Tyne, just to give you an idea, because every port is different. The other thing as well, just to give you an idea in terms of activity, it's quite broad-ranging. We have ferries and passenger cruise. We do deal with container cargo, but also bulk shipping as well. The other thing to tell you is that formerly the Port of Tyne was the port for exporting coal. So we have been going through quite a lot of transformation in the last few years. Our focus now is very much about clean energy. So consequently, we are also a base for Equinor, which runs and operates Dogger Bank, which is the world's largest offshore wind farm in the North Sea. And also continuing on, again, some of you might have seen the announcement this week, we launched our £150 million investment in a clean energy park. So the other thing I should also say is that we are the exporting port for Nissan, so we are the UK's second largest export port for automotive industry. So hopefully that's given you a bit of an idea in terms of the size and activity. We are a trust port, so what that means is that we are not government funded, but we're very much commercially driven. But we reinvest our surpluses back into the port, but also back into the maritime sector and into the region. We are very passionate about growing jobs and supporting business growth. So within that context, we set up the Maritime Innovation Hub. And through all of that mechanism and structure, we have consequently been engaging through UK Shore and become a bit of a test bed for a lot of companies to trial and develop the proof of concepts on the site. For us, in terms of the Port of Tyne, the two major transformation outcomes we're looking for is, number one, decarbonisation. So that's looking at fuels, looking at electrification. And the other transformation is really through digitalization. So our strategic partners are BT and Ericsson. We are the first and so far, as I understand, the only UK port to have port-wide 5G private network. So these are some of the really key enablers to make these transformations happen, but also to support the companies, the many companies that are currently trialing things on the site. In terms of what benefits, to your point, your question, what benefits we've had and what learnings we've had. So over the last couple of years, we've had probably about 20 plus projects in all sizes and colors and shapes, from SMEs to your large companies, doing all sorts of different things. But in terms of the UK Shore, and particularly around clean maritime, we have been involved in a green shipping project that's really looking at the journey between us from Port of Tyne and IJmuiden in Netherlands, looking at methanol in particular. But also, we are involved in a couple of CMDC6 projects currently, and also about 3 other projects, not as formal partners. So I think it's fair to say, we're learning ourselves because whilst we know broadly what the challenges are, but we don't have all the answers. I think the key point I want to make is we're learning together with these companies. And the feedback that we get from companies is that we are an end-user living lab, which is so important to take their ideas from a bench environment to actually, putting their technology on a quayside or in a warehouse or whichever environment. And collaboratively, we learn from each other from a technical point of view. But actually, perhaps more importantly, is how does it work operationally? How does the human-machine elements work together? So that's been incredibly useful.
Absolutely, and we're really keen in UK Shore to tackle the whole system. It's not just about the technology on the vessel, and you talked about the role of ports being integral to that. It's great to hear that you're involved in the projects, and I think collaboration is a word that we've thrown around a lot when we talk around UK Shore. I don't think the projects would succeed without that. I did want to pick up another one. We talked this morning in a regulation session about the interface between the energy sector and the maritime sector and the role of ports in there. So it was interesting to hear you've pivoted as a port as well to tackle and to take advantage of the changes in the energy sector. So I love the way that picked up some of the themes this morning as well. Thank you. Katrina, you mentioned the pipeline, and that's a lovely segue for me to talk to Tony, because you're at the sort of early research end and working with UK Shore. And it's a little bit different than what we've just heard about. So I'm interested in about what is the support that you've got? How has that enabled the work that you do, and what does that work entail?
Yes, so the support that we were given gave us the opportunity to create the UK National Clean Maritime Research Hub and to bring together 14 core universities to closely collaborate with each other, and a further 6 kind of associate universities that we are working on special projects that we commissioned. So it's kind of widened this research and innovation kind of ecosystem that we have. It'll enable us to co-create the research that we're conducting with industry partners and with stakeholders across the maritime sector. So over 100 partners supporting the hub. We coordinate the research and innovation activity through and supporting around 80 people that are working day in and day out on focusing on the 5 key themes that we have in terms of what we're addressing. A lot of these are early career researchers. And so we brought together a community of people that have the skill set that can be pieced together, that can be applied to the challenges that the maritime sector faces. A lot of them are have done a lot of expertise in research areas that have not traditionally been targeted at the maritime sector. But what they're working on and what they're contributing could be a game changer in terms of what we do. You know, we've been doing kind of marine engineering, naval architecture. I'm a marine engineer by seagoing and by research background. We've been doing things, but there are lots of other things that are potentially exploitable and can be targeted to work on the maritime sector. And part of our kind of role as well, that we wanted to bring the new generation of people into this exciting sector. It's a really fantastic sector to work in. A lot of opportunities to innovate, and the hub is working with the support that you've given. We also have a co-innovation cycle that we adopt. So we're not just doing research for research's sake. We're pausing that on a regular basis, and we're looking at that in 5 port-centric scenarios and seeing how can the research that we've done have an impact in the 2030 timescale, 2040, 2050, and then learn from that. And that refreshes the research that we go on to do. You know, it's a continual co-creation of the activity that we do.
I think that touches on something that Sarah talked about, is making sure that we learn from all the projects that we do and feed that into policy and regulation development. And I think some of the work that the Hub has been doing, and the policy papers, for example, are really quite useful for that. Turning to Sarah now, actually, and taking a step back from like the projects and what we do there. And you might have touched on this a little bit already, but we've had some great successes. What's stood out the most for you?
I think the thing that has really stood out for me is the diversity of the different solutions and the, if you'll forgive the phrase, the sort of the power of the widget. So there are some very small changes that can have quite a significant impact on fuel consumption or can make a potential new solution viable when it wasn't before. I was on a panel for London International Shipping Week on Monday, and there was a quite interesting discussion about whether it was a concern or not that we didn't have a great shipbuilding activity within the UK compared to several decades ago. And actually the panel was mixed in its views. But where I see the real opportunity for UK leadership is in the widget. It's in the specific solution that solves a really intractable problem, whether it's solving hydrogen embrittlement in distribution or cryogenic storage or reducing the consumption of a turbine blade. I think the other thing I'd note is that UK Shore, and I think Tony's work really embodies this, making sure the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. The value of pulling all of the different elements together, the brilliant publication that shows the description of the impact that the work has had is so important. And I think that real focus on learning, extracting the knowledge, as you were talking about, that partnership work to make sure that ports can help and learn and then work out how they can respond to these future technologies is also really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. That kind of touches on what I wanted to ask Claire, actually, because you're in quite a unique position where you're sat in kind of across government. You work with lots of different sectors, not just maritime, not just transport, even more than that. And we've heard a lot about the importance of cross-sectoral approach, and in other sessions about what we might learn from other areas. Situating UK Shore and the maritime research within that wider innovation ecosystem, from your perspective, how does it complement what is going on elsewhere? And what's the value of any sort of connected approach, and how might we strengthen those approaches and linkages?
I think with UK Shore, the thing to know is it doesn't sit in isolation. It's been funded and supported by DFT, and DFT works so closely with our teams in Innovate UK, and they have a deep understanding of the projects that are being delivered. So they're really looking at how we can help shape and deliver these kind of programs going forward to make sure you're delivering for the maritime sector. But because you don't sit in isolation, you sit in this wider ecosystem. I have the pleasure of being able to make connections. So with DBT, I run the Battery Innovation Programme. And that, you know yourselves, there's so many opportunities for battery, for the electric, for the interfaces there from Maritime, and there's a connection there. While the Battery Innovation Programme is predominantly focused on manufacturing, obviously it's agnostic to which modality uses it. So there's huge opportunities there for me to connect. And this is one of the areas I think in the next phase we are really going to lean into. But beyond that, we have DFT's ZHEAD programme. So that's zero, let me get this right, because it's too many acronyms for that one. It's Zero Emissions Heavy Goods Vehicles Infrastructure Demonstrators, which is such a mouthful. But actually, it's really crucial, that programme, because it's showing how you can decarbonise your HGVs. Now, 95% of the country's goods come through the maritime sector. They've got to be picked up by freights, and that's making the ZEVI element of the programme so important. How can that connect with ZHEAD? How can we create that wider system that will actually make the entire piece make sense? And I've been so impressed by the number of projects today and the diversity of the projects, looking at everything from route optimization all the way to how do you check the vehicles that are actually maintained as part of it, to then taking us over to the wonderful journeys out to Orkney that I know are being investigated by Artemis. So the whole ecosystem is working together, and it's a joy to be able to help connect those different sectors to make sure we get the most. And I suppose the last element I'd want to flag on that is skills are a huge area for this. I was talking to one organisation today who are doing some VR to make sure that when someone goes into the engine room, they actually do know the systems already. That's fantastic. So how can I link that up to other activities that I may be taking across with the Department of Education? So there's lots of opportunities to make sure that we're delivering for the country, to deliver the foundations of growth, to deliver that productive growth that we all know that the government's very keen on.
Quick follow-up, if I may. I've certainly seen some, and you might see some examples out there, of where we've got innovators from other sectors actually collaborating and partnering with maritime organisations in UK Shore. Is that something that you've seen is unique to UK Shore, or is that something that we're trying to really build on and grow?
I think you're probably leading more. I can see Mark in the front row. He works across a couple of the projects that we run, and that's actually, it's a real strength. But I actually think UK Shore is one of the exemplars for this for this kind of cross-program working. I don't necessarily see it quite so much in different places, but it's quite prominent in UK Shore.
Thank you. I didn't pay to say that, by the way. That was entirely off the cuff. A question for everybody now, if I may. What we've tried very hard to do in the programme today is kind of support programmes through the whole pipeline, from early research right through to demonstrators. And a couple of you have touched on it already. Why is that so critical? And then a sort of a second unprompted question, if I may. What's going to help when we think about the next few years in getting those projects from that research and out into the sort of commercialisation and operation? Does anybody want to tackle that? Go on, Sarah.
Do you want me to have a little go? So we talk a lot about adoption and diffusion of technology. There is a recognition within the Chief Scientific Advisor community, the National Technology Advisor, Dave Smith, that we've done quite well at stimulating innovation. We're brilliant in the UK at invention. We are not good at exploitation and that adoption and diffusion, and therefore making sure we get the best economic value for the work that we do. In other sectors, there are some solutions around public sector procurement that can be applied that I think are difficult to transfer to a primarily privatised maritime sector. But I do think that there are things that we can think about from a regulatory point of view. For example, exploring the equivalence of sort of regulatory sandboxes, exploiting the partnerships we've got with ports and areas of focus. I mentioned Orkneys and the Isle of Wight. There are some amazing innovation communities that are emerging in different parts of the maritime system. Thinking about how we can accelerate the regulatory environment to avoid what we're having to do at the moment with the sort of case-by-case consideration of things like maritime autonomy, I think is a really important thing. So thinking about how we can accelerate the regulation to then enable innovators to have the confidence to be able to then get that investment and adopt the solutions is something I'm really interested in seeing.
I think that's a really good point. We touched on that quite a bit in an earlier session around the importance of regulation. And it would be remiss of me not to flag the MCAs. They are forming and going to launch in the coming months the Maritime Innovation Hub to do exactly some of that, building on all the good stuff that they've done to date as well. They are, of course, only one regulator that plays in this space, but a very important one. Anybody else on any reflections? Di?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's been really noticeable for us is that we have now demonstrated this wing sail technology. We've installed it. We've done a lot of technical. We've done a lot of verification. How do we scale this, and how do we scale it is integral to what the business case is. And so when you're talking about end-to-end, we have to think about not only the technical piece, but what's the commercial challenges. And within commercial shipping, we don't know who's going to own the benefits. If we put these wings on our ship and we save 20%, 30% of our, who owns it? So there is a lot of technical exploitation needed, but it gets more into digital about how do we apportion that? What's the legal basis for that? And then how do we commercialise that? How do we build new business development models where we've got this complicated infrastructure that is a perpetual and pernicious barrier to success? How can we exploit UK capability, which is in evidence in abundance across London International Shipping Week? It's not only about technology. We can do commercial, we can do legal, and we're really, really smart. So how do we do that? And so where we did work with CMDC3 was to give confidence to the fuel safe prediction that then gives those other project partners the confidence to collaborate around that and then scale it. And then critically, with the work that we've been doing with this easy on, easy off system is, well, could we reuse that could we reuse that technology? Could we build it in a circular economy? And could we do that widget technology in the UK, that widget design? And hypothetically we can. We've looked at that. We've looked at working with the National Manufacturing Industry of Scotland, with our Scottish engineering partners, Cali and Malin. And but we need a bit of time. We need a bit of time to develop that system. But the rewards are 2.5 times what they would be if we just sold them and didn't bring them back into ownership.
I think you used a really important word, which was confidence, and that's definitely something.
Yeah.
Confidence, clarity, I think, is things that people have been asking for. Tony?
Yeah, I can give a personal example. So we applied for the first ever TRIG funding round. We were developing a novel fuel-agnostic power generation system at the time. So we're kind of looking to take that towards commercialization. So that was very, very important to us. It kind of gave the kind of proving ground. A couple of other subsequent Innovate UK proposals and projects that we carried out. Then gave that the opportunity to spin out a company from Durham to commercialize the technology. We then won a CMDC4 project, which actually allowed the confidence in private investment to come in, to actually bring in and kind of multiply that funding by a significant amount. So it's actually then moving to the trajectory of this technology to TRL level 7, and going from strength to strength. And so that kind of whole kind of ecosystem, that journey of taking kind of fundamental research that started a long time ago, then making it into a commercial organization, getting the funding, creating jobs, we're employing people, real jobs, and actually have the potential to make a difference in shore-side power, for example.
Yeah, great example, thank you.
I think for me, there was actually a boldness. I was there at some of the initial discussions about UK Shore coming on stream with DFT, and there was a boldness in them to actually go ahead with this venture. It was one of the biggest programs, I think, that you'd run at the time with us, and they obviously knew there was a problem. 2050 is not that long away, you know. We have 25 years to fix this, and we do need that pipeline of fundamental research continually coming through to then drive us through that commercialization. It's a huge challenge to get us to 2050, but it would be really sad if a maritime nation doesn't grasp the opportunity that we have to drive that growth and capture those mammoth opportunities. We can do this, and I do think it's much praise to the department for actually supporting the sector in this way.
Thank you. I'm conscious of time. I'm going to take sort of panel chair prerogative and keep us for an extra 5 minutes, if that's okay. And then I will release you all to the showcase and everything else. But if I want to finish on 2 quick questions, if I may, and this is open to all of you. Where do you think the opportunities lie for the UK when it comes to maritime research and development and innovation?
I'll have a go.
Okay, Tony and then Elaine.
I think I touched upon it earlier. I think we need to focus on the big transformation requirements in the future, which is, you know, decarbonisation and, you know, and also the digitalisation piece. That's where we see the greatest opportunities at the moment, because they are hugely challenging. What I was going to also say, actually, you know, to your question earlier about the whole pipeline journey, I think it's really important to also be to recognise, you know, that we shouldn't be completely of a technology push. There needs to be a strong commercial pull. And the challenge that we have in maritime industry, I'm going to pinch something that came up for a session this morning somewhere else, is that this is a very fragmented industry. And it's very fragmented because it's highly competitive. Yes. So it's so important to try and find a way of coalescing the industry to create that commercial pull to help all these wonderful technologies that these guys work so hard to develop, because unless we have those commercial pull, you know, Otherwise, it's just going to sit somewhere, unfortunately. But you know, I'm hopeful because these challenges are real problems, but it's a matter of trying to coordinate. You know, we can't coordinate everything, but to actually coordinate to some level to create that commercial pool.
It's a challenge I've heard regularly through this week, actually, is around the maritime sector coalescing and coming together on some issues, definitely. Does anybody else want to? Tony and then Di?
Yeah, so we have some of the world leading universities in the country, in the world. Yes. We've got a very vibrant and very agile SME kind of ecosystem. And we are exploiting that. We need to exploit that going forward. I mean, I've worked in the maritime sector for quite a long time. And most of the kind of spurts of innovation have come through oil crises. Now that's changed because we know what the long-term plan is, the challenge that we face. That's not going to go away. We've got more certainty in policy, not just within the UK, but internationally through IMO. So this is a kind of a world international effort. So we have more certainty in what we're trying to achieve and address these challenges. That hasn't been there before. So we have the opportunity from a UK perspective to innovate and actually reach global markets that we haven't reached for many, many decades through developing clean technology, clean methods, clean business cases.
Thank you, Tony. Di, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, I mean, I think the key opportunity for the UK is around export of business models. I mean, there's 109,000 ships in the world. All of them, as Tony's just said, have to a greater or lesser extent, a clear mandate that they've got to reduce emissions. But it goes beyond that. We need to be thinking about how we build this stuff, how we dispose of it. It's more than just carbon. And so we're looking at wind as a service, but that could be hardware as a service. And so what does that look like? That's a huge market, but it's not just technology. It's how do we build digital systems that unlock that potential, and that is a frictionless solution for this very fragmented and competitive industry to make the most of. So work with the industry, figure out what they need, look at what we've got in our backyard, patch it all together, and then deliver them something which is easy for them to make that problem the solution, which sounds a bit
identifying
like a marketing manual, forgive me, but it is a bit like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. I'm going to wrap it up with one more question. And the question is, if there was a one quick-fire message you'd like this audience to take away about the value and the future of maritime research and UK shore, what would it be? Please, Katrina.
Build collaborations.
Collaboration.
Yeah, collaboration is key. Look around you, see what people are doing. Don't be scared to jump in and form new collaborations with people that you'd never come across before, because that's kind of the way that a lot of our projects have developed over the years, and can actually be very commercially valuable once you get over the initial fear of IP leakage and worrying about what other people are doing. It's really good to just be very curious about the projects that are ongoing.
Yes. Thank you.
Today's the perfect opportunity.
It is. It most definitely is, with the showcase on and the B2B matching. Absolutely is. Anybody else? Sarah?
Be ambitious. Be ambitious not just for the speed in which the solutions can be adopted within the maritime sector, but for the impact the maritime sector can have on other transport sectors, on the energy economy, and on UK growth. So I think the maritime sector has so much to offer. And I would sort of just say reach for the stars.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And,
just kind of building off Katrina's point, look beyond your own sphere. Don't look at the usual suspects. Collaborate, because these are complex problems, and even individually, some of us are from fairly large organizations. We can't solve the problems ourselves. Absolutely. So collaborate, look beyond your boundaries, I would say.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you very much.
I think from a point of view of joined up thinking across coordinating decision-making, policy-making, you can't disentangle transport and maritime from energy and from business development and the rest of it. So that kind of message of linking it together, and also that this kind of very important role that you play interacting with IMO. We have to move together internationally in the challenges of the maritime sector.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
It's really difficult to summarise what everyone else said, because they're all perfectly correct. And so coming last is quite hard. So I'm going to say it's probably a reflection of that interdisciplinary cross-learning, I think, is really important. You're going to learn so much of other sectors. Other sectors, even more importantly, will learn off you. So maybe stay curious is probably my last thought.
Brilliant. I think that's a lovely phrase to finish on, which is stay curious. Thank you. If you would please thank the panel before I move on, and then I will release. Thank you very much, everybody. It was really... Right, that's it for the kind of formal bit of today. There's no more speeches or anything like that, so you are free. You can go network. Please go and visit the showcase. We've got a small selection of the projects that have been supported through UK Shore. And do take, if you see any of this unruly panel in the coffee, then please do grab them. There's a great wealth of experience here and learnings that you can pull from them. So thank you again very much. There is also the B2B matchmaking, which I think is in the Susanna Wesley room. For those that don't know, that's please head down there if you've pre-booked anything. But this is a great opportunity to connect with others across the sector. So please make use of that, as well as the showcase. I think there is a couple of slides that we just wanted to flash up. A lot of you are very interested in the UK Shore programme going forward. I'm going to leave these up here. This is just what the programme looks like over the coming years. We are developing the competitions over the next few months. The two that I really particularly wanted to highlight is in spring 2026, we aim to launch the next two big competitions, which will be the Clean Maritime Demonstration Round 7 and the next round of ZEVI. We've been listening to you over the past few years, and because we have 4 years worth of funding, what we've been able to do is stretch the delivery period for those, which I know is a welcome message for anybody that is interested. So please, I think, is that our only slide, or is there another slide? Nope, that was it. I will leave that up there. No, I won't. There it is. I will leave that up here. The team are around if anybody has any questions, but thank you all for joining us today. It's been really good talking to you all, and please enjoy the rest of the showcase. Thank you.